Madison Taylor clutched her phone in horror as she stared at the screen, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the cramped studio apartment she called home. The family group chat she had created just minutes ago to share news of her first day at Westridge Innovations now included an unexpected eighth member, Jackson Hayes, the company's notoriously private and intimidating CEO. Her trembling thumb hovered over his name, the profile picture of the stern-faced man in his 40s, staring back at her accusingly. How could she have been so careless? She'd only meant to add her Uncle Jack, but in her excitement, she'd scrolled too far in her newly imported company contacts. The mistake was understandable. Both contacts started with J, but understanding wouldn't save her from the humiliation, or worse, the potential consequences. Madison had just landed this job after months of desperate searching. The administrative assistant position at Westridge Innovations wasn't glamorous, but the salary would finally allow her to help her struggling family and maybe even start paying off her younger brother's medical bills. Now, less than 10 hours after being hired, she might have already destroyed everything. Her phone chimed again. Another message from her mother. "Maddie, honey, is that the Jackson Hayes in this chat? Your new boss, please tell me you didn't accidentally add him." Before Madison could respond, another notification appeared. Her heart stopped. Jackson Hayes. Interesting. I don't believe I've been added to a family group chat before. Madison's studio apartment suddenly felt even smaller as panic closed in around her. The tiny space, with its second-hand furniture and meticulously budgeted groceries, represented everything she had worked for, independence on a knife's edge. Her family depended on her success, especially after her father's construction accident had left them drowning in debt. With shaking fingers, she began typing an apology, but before she could send it, another message from Jackson appeared. "I see congratulations are in order for Madison. First day on the job and already making bold moves. Not many employees invite their CEO into their personal lives so quickly." The phone slipped from Madison's grip, landing face up on her worn couch. This couldn't be happening. Mr. Hayes had a reputation throughout the company as brilliant but merciless, a self-made billionaire who had built Westridge from nothing and expected nothing less than perfection. Stories circulated about employees being fired for much smaller mistakes. Another chime, this time from her younger sister Katie. "OMG, Maddie, did you seriously just add your billionaire boss to our family chat, the one where we share all our problems?" Madison felt the blood drain from her face as she quickly scrolled up through the earlier messages. There was her mother discussing their past-due electric bill, her brother mentioning his upcoming medical treatment they weren't sure how to afford, and her grandmother asking if Madison could spare any money for groceries this month. Every private struggle, every financial hardship her family faced, now displayed for the man who controlled her professional future, the man who, according to office gossip, came from old money and couldn't possibly understand what it meant to struggle. Madison forced herself to breathe as she crafted a professional apology, explaining the mistake and promising it wouldn't happen again. Her finger hovered over the send button when another message from Jackson appeared that made her freeze. "Before you remove me from this group, Madison, which I assume you're about to do, I'd like to say something." Madison waited, heart in her throat. This was it. She was about to be fired via family group chat on her first day, a record even for her string of bad luck. "Your family's support for you is admirable. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have people who care so deeply about their success. As someone who began with very little myself, contrary to what the tabloids might claim, I understand the importance of family during difficult times." Madison blinked at the screen, unsure if she was reading correctly. This didn't match the cold, calculating image portrayed in company meetings and business magazines. Before she could process his words, another message arrived from him. "Madison, I'd like to see you in my office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We should discuss your role at Westridge further." Her stomach dropped. The briefly extended olive branch was being retracted. Tomorrow morning, she would be terminated. She was certain of it. "And please, bring coffee for both of us, black for me, however you take yours. I have a proposition that might interest your family." Madison stared at the message, confusion replacing her fear. A proposition? For her family? What could the CEO of a technology empire possibly want with the Taylors, a family perpetually one missed paycheck away from disaster. Her phone chimed with messages from her family members, all variations of shock, horror, and urgent demands to know what was happening. But Madison couldn't look away from Jackson's last message, trying to decipher its meaning. As the night progressed, Madison tossed and turned in her pull-out bed, her mind racing with possibilities. Would tomorrow bring the end of her brief career at Westridge, or the beginning of something unexpected? Whatever awaited her in that corner office on the top floor, Madison knew her life had just taken a dramatic turn because of one simple slip of her thumb. Outside her window, the city lights flickered across her ceiling as she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. Her phone clutched in her hand, the screen still open to the family chat where a billionaire CEO had somehow, impossibly, shown a glimpse of humanity that no one at Westridge had ever seen before. The Westridge Innovations headquarters loomed above Madison like a steel and glass mountain as she approached the entrance at 7:45 a.m. The morning sun reflected off its windows, temporarily blinding her, a fitting metaphor for how she felt walking into this situation, disoriented and exposed. In one hand, she clutched her worn leather bag, in the other, a cardboard tray with 2 coffees from the corner shop that had nearly emptied her wallet. Inside the elevator, Madison caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, despite her attempts to conceal them with makeup. Her navy blue dress, the only professional outfit she owned, had been hastily steamed in her bathroom this morning. She had pulled her auburn hair into a neat bun, trying to project composure she didn't feel. "You can do this," she whispered to herself as the elevator climbed to the top floor. "It's just a conversation." But nothing about Jackson Hayes was just anything. As the elevator doors opened to the executive floor, Madison took a deep breath and stepped into territory few entry-level employees ever saw. "Ms. Taylor?" A polished woman at the reception desk nodded. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you." Madison followed her through a set of glass doors into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Jackson Hayes stood with his back to her, gazing outward, hands clasped behind him. He turned when she entered, his expression unreadable. "Madison, right on time." His voice was deep and measured, a stark contrast to her racing pulse. Up close, he was taller than she'd expected, with dark hair graying at the temples and intense blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on. "I brought coffee," she said, immediately wanting to kick herself for stating the obvious. She extended the tray toward him. "Thank you." He took his cup and gestured toward a seating area near the windows rather than the imposing desk that dominated one side of the office. "Please, sit." Madison perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. "I imagine you didn't sleep well last night," he said, sitting across from her. Madison swallowed hard. "Not particularly. No, I owe you an apology." His words caught her completely off guard. "I should have removed myself from the chat immediately. Instead, I invaded your privacy. Sir, I'm the one who should apologize. It was completely unprofessional of me to—" He raised a hand, cutting her off. "Mistakes happen, Madison, especially on first days. What interests me more is what I learned from those messages." Madison's chest tightened. Here it came. He was uncomfortable with an employee whose family was so clearly struggling financially. She would be let go because she didn't fit the polished Westridge image. "Your brother, Tyler, he's facing another surgery." The personal question caught her off guard. "Yes, for complications from his accident last year. The insurance—" "It doesn't cover everything," Jackson nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "And your father, he was injured on a construction site 18 months ago. Spinal injury. He can't work anymore." Madison wasn't sure why she was divulging these details, but something in Jackson's tone made it feel less like an interrogation and more like genuine interest. "Yet despite all this, you graduated top of your class and managed to support your family." He stated it as a fact, not a question. Madison's brow furrowed. "How did you—" "I had HR pull your file last night. Your resume doesn't do justice to your accomplishments, Ms. Taylor." An uncomfortable silence fell between them as Madison tried to process what was happening. This wasn't the conversation she had expected. "I grew up in Pinewood," Jackson said suddenly. The mention of her own struggling hometown startled her. "Pinewood? But I thought—" "That I was born into wealth?" A wry smile touched his lips. a convenient fiction I've never bothered to correct. The truth is less glamorous. My mother worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat after my father left. I worked nights at the mill to pay for community college. Madison stared at him, trying to reconcile this information with the imperious figure who dominated boardrooms and business magazines. Your family reminds me of mine, he continued, the way they support each other, the sacrifices they're willing to make. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your understanding, but Jackson, please, at least in private. Jackson, she repeated, the name feeling foreign on her tongue. I'm confused about why I'm here. He set his coffee down and leaned forward. Your background check revealed something interesting. You studied business analytics before having to drop out to support your family. Madison nodded, a familiar pang of regret washing over her. 1 semester shy of my degree. That's the proposition I mentioned, he said. The administrative position you were hired for isn't where your talents would best serve Westridge or yourself. I don't understand. I'm offering you a different position, junior analyst in our market research department. The salary is double what you'd make as an administrative assistant, plus comprehensive benefits that would cover your brother's medical needs. Madison's coffee nearly slipped from her grasp. But I don't have my degree. You'll complete it while working, company-sponsored. His expression remained businesslike, but there was something else there, something that reminded her of how her father used to look when he'd found a solution to a problem he'd been working on. Why would you do this? The question escaped before she could stop it. Jackson's expression softened marginally. Because talent shouldn't be wasted due to circumstances beyond one's control. I had someone who gave me a chance once. I believe in returning the favor when I see potential. Madison's mind raced, trying to process the unexpected turn of events. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. There's a catch, isn't there? She asked cautiously. For the first time, Jackson Hayes smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face entirely. Smart. Always look for the catch. That's good business instinct. He leaned back in his chair. The catch is that the position is demanding. Long hours, high expectations. I don't tolerate excuses or mediocrity. I've never given less than my best, Madison said, straightening her shoulders. I know. That's why I'm making the offer. He reached for a folder on the table between them and handed it to her. Your new contract. Take today to review it. If you accept, you start in the market research department tomorrow. As Madison took the folder with trembling fingers, her phone buzzed in her bag. The family group chat. She glanced at it, then back at Jackson. You haven't removed me yet, he observed. I wasn't sure if I should. It seemed presumptuous. Jackson considered this for a moment. Keep me in the chat for now. I'd like to explain to your family personally why I've changed your position. Madison's eyes widened. You want to stay in my family's group chat? Just long enough to assure them this isn't some elaborate way of firing you. A hint of amusement flickered in his eyes. From what I've seen, your grandmother in particular seems protective. Madison couldn't help the small laugh that escaped her. That's putting it mildly. She once threatened to hit my high school principal with her purse when he suggested I couldn't take advanced classes. I like her already. Jackson stood, signaling the end of their meeting. Review the contract, Madison. This opportunity could change everything for you and your family. As Madison rose to leave, clutching the folder to her chest like a lifeline, Jackson added, And Madison, that mistake you made yesterday, it might be the best thing that's happened to this company in quite some time. Walking back to the elevator, Madison felt as though she were floating. The weight that had pressed down on her shoulders since her father's accident, through Tyler's medical complications, through endless nights of worry about bills and food and keeping everyone afloat, it hadn't disappeared, but for the first time in years it felt manageable. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her mother. Maddie. Any news? We're all worried sick here. Madison typed a quick response. Everything's fine. Better than fine. I'll explain everything tonight. And, Mr. Hayes is still in the chat. He has something he wants to tell all of you himself. The following week passed in a blur for Madison. Her days were filled with intensive training sessions, introductions to complex market analysis software, and meetings with her new team. Her nights were spent poring over reports and case studies at her small kitchen table, determined to prove Jackson Hayes hadn't made a mistake in giving her this chance. The memory of that evening a week ago still felt surreal. After returning to her apartment from the meeting with Jackson, she had called her family on video chat to explain everything. Their faces had cycled through disbelief, suspicion, and finally cautious excitement as she showed them the contract with its life-changing salary figure. "It's too good to be true," her father had said, the lines on his face deepening with worry. "People like us don't get breaks like this, Maddie." Then, as if on cue, a message had appeared in the family group chat. Jackson Hayes: "Mr. Taylor, I understand your concern. I'd be skeptical too, but your daughter impressed me with both her qualifications and her dedication to your family. Westridge isn't gaining charity case. We're gaining talent that would have cost us dearly had another company discovered her first." Her grandmother had been the first to warm to him. "Well, Mr. Fancy CEO, as long as you're not working my granddaughter to death, we might get along. But if she starts losing weight because she's skipping meals to impress you, you'll answer to me." To Madison's shock, Jackson had responded with unexpected humor. "Your warning is duly noted, Mrs. Taylor. I've already instructed the department to keep healthy snacks on hand. I have no desire to face whatever is in that purse your granddaughter mentioned." That exchange had broken the tension, and by the end of the conversation, even Madison's father had grudgingly accepted that this opportunity might be legitimate. Jackson had gracefully removed himself from the chat afterward, but not before sending one final message. "Madison has my direct number now for work purposes. Feel free to contact me if you have concerns about her well-being. Family matters." Now sitting in the company cafeteria with her lunch, a salad she could finally afford without counting pennies, Madison still couldn't believe how drastically her life had changed in just 7 days. Her first paycheck had already covered Tyler's copay for his next procedure, and she'd moved her parents' overdue electric bill to paid status. "Mind if I join you?" Madison looked up to find Natalie Parker, one of the senior analysts from her department, standing beside her table with a tray. With her tailored suit and confident demeanor, Natalie represented everything Madison aspired to become at Westridge. "Of course not," Madison replied, gesturing to the empty chair. Natalie sat down gracefully. "So you're Jackson's new protege. The whole office is talking about it." Madison nearly choked on her water. "His what?" "Come on, Madison. Entry-level hire jumped to junior analyst with personal mentoring from the CEO. That doesn't happen here." Natalie's tone remained friendly, but Madison detected something else beneath it. "People are curious about how you managed it." "It was just a misunderstanding that led to—" "A misunderstanding?" Natalie raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "That's the story going around. You accidentally added him to some chat and suddenly you're the golden girl." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Between us, was it really an accident? Because if it was a strategy, I'm impressed." Madison felt her cheeks burn. "It was absolutely an accident. I would never—" "Hey, no judgment here," Natalie said, raising her hands in surrender. "We all do what we need to get ahead. And speaking of getting ahead, there's a department happy hour tonight at Hudson's. You should come. Meet the team in a less official setting." Despite her discomfort with Natalie's insinuations, Madison recognized the importance of networking. "I'll try to make it." "Great." Natalie smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, and just a friendly tip. Try not to mention your special connection with Jackson around the others. Some people have been here for years without so much as a nod from him in the hallway." As Natalie walked away, Madison's appetite vanished. She hadn't considered how her unusual promotion might appear to others. In her focus on proving herself professionally, she'd overlooked the social complications of her situation. That afternoon, Madison was scheduled for her first direct meeting with Jackson since starting her new position. As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, Natalie's words echoed in her mind. Was everyone in the company talking about her? Did they all assume she had somehow manipulated her way into this position? "Madison," Jackson greeted her as she entered his office. "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you," she replied automatically, taking the now familiar seat across from him. Jackson studied her for a moment. "That doesn't sound convincing. Problems?" Madison hesitated, unsure how to broach the subject without sounding petty or ungrateful. "Not with the work, it's just there are rumors." Understanding dawned on his face. "About how you got the position?" "Yes." That was to be expected. He seemed remarkably unconcerned. "Office politics are unavoidable. Focus on your results and the rumors will fade." What if they don't? Madison asked. What if people always see me as someone who got here through a fluke or... She swallowed hard. Or worse. Jackson's expression hardened slightly. Has someone said something specific? No, not exactly. Madison backpedaled, not wanting to sound like she was complaining about Natalie. It's just the general impression I'm getting. He considered this for a moment. The quarterly project presentations are next week. Your team is tackling the expansion analysis for the West Coast market, correct? Madison nodded, wondering at the sudden change of subject. That's your opportunity, he said. Excellence silences critics more effectively than explanations ever could. As their meeting continued, focusing on her progress and the upcoming project, Madison couldn't shake the uneasiness that had settled in her stomach. Jackson's advice made sense in theory, but the reality of navigating these waters felt far more treacherous than any analysis or report. That evening, despite her reservations, Madison found herself at Hudson's, an upscale bar near the office where groups of Westridge employees clustered around high tables. She spotted her team in the corner and made her way over, nursing a single glass of wine she planned to make last the entire evening. "Madison, you made it," Natalie called, perhaps a bit too loudly. Madison noticed several heads turn in their direction. "Everyone, this is Madison Taylor, our newest analyst and Jackson Hayes' personal project." The introduction sent a flush of embarrassment through Madison as she forced a smile and greeted her colleagues. The conversation flowed around her, professional on the surface with undercurrents she couldn't quite interpret. Was that laughter a bit too pointed? Did that question about her background have a double meaning? "So, Madison," said Daniel, another senior analyst, after they'd been there about an hour. "What's Hayes really like behind closed doors? Still the Ice King we all know and fear?" "He's been very professional," Madison answered carefully. "Come on," pressed Daniel. "You can tell us. Does he ever loosen up that tie? Show a hint of humanity? There's a betting pool in the finance department about whether he sleeps or just powers down at night." The group laughed, and Madison felt herself relaxing slightly at what seemed like good-natured curiosity rather than malice. "He's not what people think," she found herself saying. "He's demanding, yes, but also—" She was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. The bar had suddenly hushed, and heads were turning toward the door. Madison followed their gaze and froze. Jackson Hayes stood in the doorway of Hudson's, scanning the room until his eyes locked with hers. The impossible had happened. The CEO of Westridge Innovations, known for avoiding social functions with employees, had just walked into a bar where junior staff were unwinding. As Jackson made his way toward their table, Madison felt the atmosphere change from shock to electric curiosity. What was he doing here? Had something happened? "Ms. Taylor," he said formally as he reached them. "I apologize for the interruption. Could I speak with you for a moment?" Aware of every eye in the establishment watching them, Madison nodded and followed him to a quiet corner. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her mind racing through possibilities. Had there been a problem with her work? Was there an emergency with her family? "Your brother's surgery has been moved up," Jackson said without preamble. "The specialist I recommended had a cancellation. Tyler can be seen tomorrow morning." Madison stared at him, processing his words. "How did you—" "I made some calls after our last conversation about his condition." Jackson's expression remained professional, but there was that same look she'd noticed before, the problem solver at work. "The surgeon owes me a favor. Your brother will receive the best care available." Tears welled in Madison's eyes before she could stop them. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. This isn't charity, Madison, it's investment in talent. I can't have my promising new analyst distracted by family medical concerns." His tone was matter-of-fact, but the gesture itself spoke volumes. Across the bar, Madison could see her colleagues watching with undisguised interest, undoubtedly spinning new theories about her relationship with the CEO. But in that moment, with the weight of Tyler's medical uncertainty lifted from her shoulders, she couldn't bring herself to care about their speculation. As Jackson turned to leave, he paused. "I almost forgot. Your analysis of the demographic shifts in the targeted expansion areas. Excellent work. If the rest of your presentation next week maintains that standard, you'll silence any questions about why you're here." With a nod to the stunned group of employees at the table, Jackson departed as suddenly as he had arrived, leaving Madison standing in a bar full of wide-eyed colleagues and a reputation that had just become infinitely more complicated. The day of the quarterly presentations arrived with a tension that seemed to crackle through the Westridge offices. For Madison, the stakes couldn't be higher. After Jackson's unexpected appearance at Hudson's the week before, the whispers had only intensified. No longer was she just the girl who got lucky with a misdirected message. Now she was the focus of elaborate theories about her connection to the notoriously private CEO. "Ready for this?" Daniel asked as they prepared in the conference room. His tone had shifted since the bar incident, now colored with a respect that bordered on wariness. Madison nodded, adjusting the presentation materials on the table. She'd barely slept for days, dividing her time between perfecting this presentation and visiting Tyler in the hospital. The surgery had been successful, miraculously so, according to the specialist Jackson had arranged. For the first time in over a year, her brother was pain-free and looking at a real recovery. "More than ready," she replied, smoothing down her new navy suit, the first truly professional outfit she'd been able to buy herself. The material was crisp and confident against her skin, a physical reminder of how far she'd come in such a short time. One by one, executives and department heads filed into the room, followed by team leaders and senior analysts. Madison spotted Natalie taking a seat near the front, her expression unreadable. Finally, Jackson entered, nodding briefly to the assembled group before taking his place at the head of the table. "Let's begin," he said simply, and the presentations commenced. Madison's team was scheduled third. As she watched the first two groups present, she noted Jackson's reactions, the subtle shifts in his posture, the occasional note he made, the penetrating questions he asked that cut straight to the core of any weakness in an analysis. He was exactly as rumored, brilliant, exacting, and impossible to impress. When it was their turn, Daniel opened with the market overview before handing the floor to Madison for the critical expansion analysis. As she stood, she felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. This wasn't just about proving herself to colleagues who doubted her. It was about validating Jackson's decision to give her this chance. "The West Coast expansion presents unique challenges," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. "Traditional models suggest focusing on major metropolitan areas first, but our analysis indicates an alternative approach would yield greater long-term returns." She moved through her presentation methodically, highlighting the data that supported their unconventional recommendation to target mid-sized cities with specific demographic profiles before moving to larger markets. With each slide, each point, Madison felt more confident. This was what she was meant to do, finding patterns in chaos, translating numbers into strategy. When she reached her conclusion, the room had fallen into a focused silence, the kind that comes not from boredom, but from genuine engagement. "Questions?" she asked, finally daring to meet Jackson's gaze directly. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Your analysis contradicts 3 previous expansion studies. What makes you so confident in these findings?" It was the question she had anticipated and dreaded in equal measure, a direct challenge to the foundation of her work. "Previous studies relied heavily on consumer spending patterns from the last decade," Madison replied. "But our team identified a significant shift in how younger demographics engage with our product category. When we applied the updated behavior models to population migration data," she clicked to a slide she'd prepared for precisely this question, "we found that these mid-sized cities represent concentrated pockets of our ideal growth market. Moving into major metropolitan areas first would actually dilute our impact and increase customer acquisition costs by approximately 23%. A murmur rippled through the room. Jackson leaned forward slightly. "And if these behavior models prove inaccurate?" Madison didn't hesitate. "We've built contingencies into the rollout plan. Each phase includes verification checkpoints before proceeding to the next. If the initial results don't align with projections, we can pivot to the traditional model with minimal sunk costs." The corner of Jackson's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen from him in a professional setting. "Well thought out," he said finally. "I want a detailed implementation timeline on my desk by the end of the week." As Madison returned to her seat, she caught Natalie's expression, a mixture of surprise and grudging respect. The remaining presentations proceeded, but Madison barely registered them, her mind already racing ahead to the implementation plan Jackson had requested. After the meeting concluded, Madison gathered her materials, planning to head straight back to her desk to start on the timeline. As the room cleared, she found herself alone with Jackson, who had remained seated, reviewing notes. "Mr. Hayes," she acknowledged, preparing to leave. "A moment, Madison," he said, setting down his tablet. "That was impressive work today." "Thank you, sir. You've proven me right." There was a satisfaction in his tone that went beyond mere professional approval. "How is your brother recovering?" The sudden shift to the personal caught her off guard. "Very well. The doctor says he might be able to return to school next month." Jackson nodded. "Good. And your parents? The new living arrangement is working out?" With her first paycheck, Madison had been able to move her parents to a ground-floor apartment that accommodated her father's mobility issues, another life-changing improvement. "Yes, it's made a huge difference for them." Madison hesitated, then added, "My family is very grateful for everything you've done." "I haven't done anything special," Jackson replied, his tone suddenly cooler. "Westridge compensates talent appropriately, that's all." But they both knew it was more than that. The specialist for Tyler, the expedited insurance coverage, the personal interest in her family's welfare, these went far beyond normal employee benefits. "Of course," Madison said quickly. "I just meant—" "I understand what you meant." Jackson stood, gathering his materials. "There's something we need to discuss. Walk with me." They left the conference room together, attracting curious glances as they moved through the open office area toward the executive elevator. Inside, Jackson pressed the button for the top floor, and they rode in silence. Instead of heading to his office, however, Jackson led Madison to a small terrace garden that she hadn't known existed, a peaceful space overlooking the city, filled with carefully tended plants. "Few people know about this place," Jackson said, noting her surprise. "I come here when I need to think clearly." Madison waited, sensing he was working his way to something important. "The board meeting this morning went well," he finally continued. "Your expansion strategy was approved. It will be implemented exactly as you outlined." "That's wonderful news," Madison said, genuinely excited. "There's more." Jackson turned to face her directly. "The board also approved the creation of a new division, Market Innovation. It will focus on identifying emerging trends and developing tailored expansion strategies like the one you presented today." Madison nodded, not quite understanding why he was sharing this organizational detail with her. "I've recommended you to head this division." The words didn't register at first. When they did, Madison felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. That's a director-level position," she stammered. "I've only been with the company for a month. I don't even have my degree yet." "You'll complete your degree as planned," Jackson said matter-of-factly. "The position will be held for you. In the meantime, you'll work directly with me, learning the aspects of the role that can't be taught in a classroom." "Why me?" The question burst from her before she could stop it. "There are dozens of people more qualified, people who've been here for years." Jackson's expression softened slightly. "Because you see patterns others miss. Because you're not afraid to challenge conventional thinking when the data supports it. And because you understand what it means to have real stakes, to have people depending on your success." He turned to look out at the city sprawling below them. "When I started Westridge, everyone said I was making a mistake, that my approach wouldn't work, that I didn't have the right background or connections." "What made you keep going?" Madison asked. "My mother had remortgaged her house to help me start the company. My younger sister had delayed college to work and contribute. I couldn't fail. Not with their futures tied to mine." He glanced at her. "Sound familiar?" Madison nodded, a lump forming in her throat as she thought of her own family, how their hopes and needs had driven her forward, even when exhaustion and doubt threatened to overwhelm her. "That kind of pressure either breaks people or forges them into something exceptional," Jackson continued. "I recognized that quality in you the moment I read those family messages. Not the desperation, the determination." A comfortable silence fell between them as Madison processed his words and the opportunity he was offering. "There will be resistance," Jackson said finally. "Some will say you haven't earned this, that it's favoritism." "Let them," Madison replied with newfound confidence. "I'll prove them wrong with results, just like today." Jackson's smile was small but genuine. "That's exactly what I would have said." As they turned to leave the terrace, Madison felt a strange sense of coming full circle. A month ago, she had been terrified of losing an entry-level position, because of a simple mistake. Now she stood on the threshold of a career she had never dared to imagine for herself. "One more thing," Jackson said as they reached the elevator. "Your family group chat. I've been thinking about it." Madison winced slightly, still embarrassed by the original mishap despite everything that had come from it. "What would they think about having dinner with me next weekend? I'd like to meet the people who helped shape you into the person you are." The invitation was so unexpected that Madison could only stare at him for a moment. "You want to have dinner with my family? Is that so surprising? I've been part of their group chat after all." There was that hint of humor again, a side of Jackson Hayes that the business world never saw. "Besides, I think your grandmother and I would get along. Anyone who threatens a school principal with her purse to defend educational opportunities is someone I'd like to know." Madison laughed, the sound echoing slightly in the empty elevator. "She'd love to meet you. They all would." 6 months later, Madison stood in her new office, a spacious corner space on the executive floor, with views that reminded her of the terrace garden. Her degree hung framed on the wall, alongside the first market strategy she had developed that had now been successfully implemented in 3 regions. Her phone chimed with a message from the family group chat, which, to everyone's amusement, still included Jackson. He had never removed himself after that first accidental addition, instead becoming an unexpected but welcome extension of their support system. The message was from her mother. "Don't forget, Jackson's bringing dessert for Sunday dinner. He promised Tyler that chocolate cake from the bakery near his place." Madison smiled as she typed a reply. "I'll remind him at our meeting this afternoon. Though I think he remembers every promise he makes." It had been a long, challenging road to this point. There had been office politics to navigate, doubters to prove wrong, and the constant pressure of learning at an accelerated pace. But with each successful project, each presentation that exceeded expectations, Madison had solidified her position at Westridge not as the girl who got lucky, but as a genuinely valuable asset to the company. And Jackson had been there every step of the way, not smoothing her path or removing obstacles, but guiding her through them, challenging her to rise to each occasion. Their professional relationship had evolved into a mentorship that benefited them both. Madison gained from his experience and insight, while Jackson found in her a fresh perspective that revitalized his approach to the business he had built. As for the personal connection that had begun with that mistaken message, it had transformed into something neither could have predicted. Not romance, as many in the office had speculated, but something equally meaningful. A bond forged through shared understanding of what it meant to climb from nothing, to carry the weight of family on your shoulders, to be driven by something deeper than ambition alone. Looking out at the city below, Madison thought about the countless ways a life could change in an instant, how a single mistake could open doors previously invisible. She thought of her brother, now recovered and back in school, her parents finally free from the crushing burden of medical debt, and herself standing in an office she could never have imagined occupying just months ago. Her computer chimed with a calendar notification. "Strategic planning with JH, $2 p.m. Madison gathered her materials, smiling at the thought of their upcoming discussion about Westridge's next bold move. Sometimes the most life-changing connections happened by accident, a wrong number, a mistaken identity, or in her case, an errant thumb that added the wrong contact to a family chat. But what happened afterward? That was no accident. That was determination, hard work, and the courage to walk through the door when opportunity unexpectedly knocked. Madison closed her office door behind her, heading toward the boardroom where Jackson waited. The future stretched before her, bright with possibility, all because of one simple mistake that turned out to be the best thing that had ever happened to her.